Hey guys, so I know that last week I said that this is how the lessons for week 6 would go. It would be more of a kind of lecture style lesson, just because I felt like this would be the easiest way for me to be able to get the content across to you, rather than just giving you, a PowerPoint to work through or a whole lot of activities to work through that I couldn't properly explain to you. So hopefully you will find this helpful. So at this point, you should have submitted your To Kill a Mockingbird essay either last night or first thing this morning. Should be done, should be submitted, hopefully. And we're starting our new unit of work, which is on an intertextual, or it is an intertextual study. So last semester, you would have done some kind of intertextual study if you were in my class. And I know one of the other classes did a comparison between an episode of Black Mirror, so Nosedive, and The Truman Show. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So when we think about intertextuality, or we study intertextuality, just as a bit of a recap, we're essentially looking at the relationship between texts, especially literary ones. So quite often when we consider or talk about intertextuality, we're talking about one text specifically referencing another text. So quite often, if you're familiar with The Simpsons, they do this kind of thing all the time. You can see the Beatles Simpsons there. And for those of you who remember Macbeth fondly from last semester, we've got the Simpsons and Macbeth there as well. So you've got obviously one text referencing another. Doesn't always have to be that style though. Obviously last semester, if you studied Nosedive and The Truman Show, those two texts don't reference each other. So The Truman Show doesn't talk about Nosedive. The intertextuality was created in your essay. So you would have written an essay saying, okay, there are themes and plot points and all kinds of underlying things that are similar between Nosedive and The Truman Show, and that's where the intertextuality comes in. This term, though, we are going to be doing something a little bit different, but I'll go into that in a little bit more detail later on. So you will be creating a transformative text based on elements, spell incorrectly, from To Kill a Mockingbird. So again, I will go through this assessment in more detail in a later video. In today's lesson, I basically want you to start thinking creatively. I know that we haven't done a creative piece yet this term. So today's lesson is going to be giving you the chance to be creative. So in your groups, I'm going to get you to cast your mind back. If you've got the Southern Gothic information sheet that I gave you during the To Kill a Mockingbird unit, that would be great. If you don't, that's fine as well. Hopefully you will remember the characteristics. But basically, I just want you to discuss and jot down the key characteristics of the Southern Gothic genre. If everyone around you is still watching, please don't interrupt them. Just start brainstorming yourself, and then once they're finished, you can all brainstorm together. In a minute, I'm going to get you to pause it. Once you've got the list, start rewatching this video again. So 5 minutes to brainstorm. Once you've done that, start watching this video again. Okay, so pause this video now. Okay, so hopefully you would have come up with a whole lot of characteristics of Southern Gothic genre, which I'm going to go through. I'm going to try and move this. I'm going to go through with you guys now. So one of the first elements of the Southern Gothic genre is a small town setting. So obviously in To Kill a Mockingbird, really obvious small town. You've got the county, Macomb County. Everyone knows each other's business, really kind of small insular community. Colloquial language, I know we spoke about this last week, the idea of a age group or a certain country or a certain town or even a certain school having words that make sense to them but may not make sense in other contexts. So the example we used last week were things like yeet or lit, fam, or whatever it is the kids are saying nowadays. Grotesque characters. So it doesn't even necessarily need to be characters that are grotesque. It can be just elements of the grotesque. So, and quite often this manifests itself physically. So if we remember the description of Mrs. Dubose in the final throes of her morphine addiction, she's described in quite a grotesque way. Superstition and fear. So the idea of pretty much the entire first half of the novel, particularly, you've got Jem and Scout kind of creating their own story about Boo Radley and instilling fear within themselves. And then there's a bit of superstition that's spoken about as well in To Kill a Mockingbird, mainly by Scout. Usually as a corrupt power figure or institution. Obviously in To Kill a Mockingbird, the court and the jury is that corrupt power institution. Interesting that one of the good characters is kind of right in the midst of that. So Atticus is a part of the corrupt institution. You could also argue as well that the town itself was that kind of corrupt institution as well. And innocent, obviously you've got Tom Robinson, you've got Scout, you've got Boo Radley as an innocent character. So it could be that you think about innocence in terms of age. It could be that you think about innocence in terms of naivety. Take that how you will with innocence. An outsider, so someone coming from the outside and making some kind of a change or shaking things up. In To Kill a Mockingbird, you could argue that Atticus is an outsider. He's very different to the stereotypical Macomb County resident. And he makes a positive change, I guess, in the town, but doesn't always necessarily need to be a positive change that's made by that outsider. And then this idea of a time where things are really slow and old and there's a lot of decay. Quite often there's a notion of like heat as well. So that kind of heat speeding up that decay and things going to spoil. And yeah, just like this sense of, you know, obviously the To Kill a Mockingbird set in the Depression, so you've got a literal drought occurring as well. But yeah, just this time of, or this sense of slowness and stillness and decay. So with that in mind, you will have either hard copies of these or on Daymap. There'll be one or the other. You'll have access to these. Hopefully you remember from the beginning of our To Kill a Mockingbird task, we looked at these images and I got you guys to kind of identify how these images might be considered to be reflective of the Southern Gothic genre. You're going to choose one of these pictures today as your inspiration, and you're going to create a piece of writing around it. Now, I'm happy for you to choose pretty much whatever creative form you would like. If you want to do a narrative, that's fine. If you want to do a letter, a diary entry, it can be set in any time. So you can do a radio play, you can write a script for a film, you can write a TV show idea. But the important thing is that you have elements of the Southern Gothic genre in there. So that list, that if you want to screenshot that, I'll put it up on Daymap anyway. You want to make sure you're including those things in it. So I want you to choose one picture that kind of captures your imagination. You can kind of go in lots of different directions with these pictures. So you've got quite literal things like the handful of worms, or you can kind of go a little bit more ambiguous and you can take like the girl with the white holding an axe or the old plantation manor and kind of do what you would like with it. But these are definitely your creative prompts. First thing, if you're stuck, if you can just take this and run with it, go for it. If you are stuck, sort out the 5 W's of your story. So who's involved, what happened, when did it happen, where and why. You're going to want to keep that Southern Gothic, the list in your head. So when you're thinking about the time period and the setting, what kind of characteristics is it going to have? Who's involved? What's happened to them? Think about all those characters. And then I would like you to begin writing. If you are stuck, like I said, start with those 5 W's. And I would suggest doing a narrative, so writing a story. Remember, keep those characteristics in your mind. All of those things to do with Southern Gothic genre, those are probably the most important things that you want to remember to include in your story. So that's all I've really got for you guys today. You're going to be spending the rest of the lesson doing this, probably a bit of tomorrow's lesson as well. Yeah, that's the first video done. Thanks, guys.